Okay, so starting off here with just a rough sketch. This is what's known as a sectional view. So if you imagine that your house, we've chopped straight down through from the roof down to the floor, and we cut through, and this is the view you will see if you were doing it not in your actual house, because I haven't cut your house in half. I've just sketched one up, but you get the idea. But this will go through. I'm just going to try and explain to people what I think is the pure genius of the old traditional build quality with this is based on a brick built building, but this could work through Victorian, Georgian Victorian, Edwardian, 1920s, 1930s. Things start to change slightly, but generally it covers quite a large area, a large span. So I've now highlighted the brown area at the bottom, which is obviously to show the earth into which the building sits. The two grey squares, they show the foundation of the building for the walls. Now I've shown them on here as they're what's known as strip foundations, which are concrete foundations predominantly in today's mud. That's how we look at it in today's world. However, they were often, particularly quite commonly through Victorian, Edwardian periods, they would have been a brick stepped foundation. Now I haven't drawn that on, but I do have a short video to follow in a second to show you one which is a job that we did now in last year, and we unearthed the foundations on this particular job. So if you just look down now as we go through and play this short video, you can see there that there's two courses of bricks. They're actually stepped down. I'm obviously having to look down from the top down because that's the only way I could get into it, but I couldn't get an angle from the side. But it gives you an idea of how they were originally built in the days before poured concrete strip foundations. Now in this next image you can see these yellow blocks that I've set into the walling. Now what they are, they're actually to represent what was known as the wall plates, and the wall plates were timber wall plates that were set in on one course of brickwork. So they used to take up half the overall thickness of the 225mm wall. And you'll see in a minute, I'll explain why they were set in. They were generally put in, I haven't done any of this to scale, I just sketched it up this morning, but they were generally put in at a distance of 2 foot apart, roughly speaking. They would vary depending on the overall ceiling height, and that could also, so it will often have governed the number of wall plates that were installed into the walls. But if you were looking at a bog standard sort of conventional 2.4 metre in our money, or 2.44 metre, or 8 foot in old days, ceiling height, then you would have had the first plate generally around 2 foot off the ground, or 600mm, and then the next one would have been central at 4 foot off the ground, which is 1.2 metres or 1.22 metres, and the top one would have been at 6 foot off the ground, which would have been 1.8 metres. And the purpose of those wall plates was to then fit some upright timbers which could fix into those wall plate timbers, and then onto those uprights, so they're going vertically. Obviously the wall plates are running horizontally in the brick coursework, and then on top of those vertical uprights, then the laths, which would have been traditionally chestnut or oak, they are then nailed, or would have been nailed horizontally over the top of those vertical uprights, and that then gives you the surface to apply the first coat of lime plaster and squidge through the gaps and get a good firm grip onto those laths. So where, in what I said earlier, and I still believe so, where the genius of this comes in is that, as you can see now, where I've indicated with some arrows, you've got air moving in through the air bricks underneath your ground floor into the subfloor void, the ventilation void. That starts by doing so. That ensures that all of your floor timbers, your floor joists, your floorboards, boards, etc. They remain dry. You don't get damp issues. You don't get beetle infestations. You don't have any problems with it. Then up behind the vertical uprights, which are fixed to the horizontal wall plates, there's an air gap, so the air can then travel up through behind there. So any moisture that's created within the living areas of the house, that gets absorbed into those lime plastered walls, and if it does soak into the lime, you've got an air gap there with fresh air running up through to take that moisture and carry it out up into the roof space. Now, further to that, for ventilation, you've always got eaves ventilation. Now, the eaves, for those who don't know, is the area that we term, it's the area that where the roof meets the walls. So you can see the arrows I've put in at the left and the right. So that will give you an airflow through your roof space or your attic or your loft, however you want to call it. And that's to bring fresh air in and then allow warm, moist air out. Moist air that could have permeated up through the ceilings into the loft. Now, in addition to all of that, of course, you used to have good old-fashioned open fires. So more of the moist air could be sucked up through the chimney and out through the top. So back in the day when these properties were originally built, they were not damp, cold, mouldy, horrible places to live. They were actually extremely hygienic. And what we see nowadays is the results of, over the decades, over the centuries, of people ripping out all the lime plaster, ripping all of the vertical uprights, ripping the wall plates out, going back to hard walls, gypsum plaster, cement renders on the outside, all of these awful bloody materials which just trap and hold moisture. There's no airflow anymore. Chimneys are removed, chimney stacks are taken down, chimney breasts were removed out of the properties. Even the timber floors were hacked up and butchered in the 70s, was prevalent area for it, and then backfilled with concrete. So, when I'm not one who personally will accept the criticism from people saying that old houses are damp houses. They're not damp. They've been created damp by stupid people doing stupid things to them. If they'd been left as they were built and intended to be to be used, these properties they wouldn't be damp, they wouldn't be cold, and they wouldn't be mouldy, and you wouldn't have all of the issues that we constantly hear about today. It's down to humans buggering them up. Simple as that.